Now it is.
All right, now we're really rolling. I am here with the Meat Mafia, who everyone in my subscription list that had a chance to see them loved them. And then, of course, with my lovely daughter, Carlisle Diana. And okay, sorry about that, guys. Had to shut mine down. And so I had challenged the guys to find out a little bit about intuitive eating. Thank you both for being here. I'm not quite sure which, it always ends up different somewhere in the atmosphere than it is on my screen, so I can't really say which one's which, but Harrison, if you could raise your hand so people could know which one's you, and then
That's
Brett
me. Yep.
is the other one. Okay, so now we know that this is the Meat Mafia and who's who. Harrison, do you prefer Harrison or Harry?
Either one works. Most people call me
Okay.
Harry, though.
Okay, sounds good. So where I wanted to start is I just wanted to introduce you guys to my daughter. And the reason I thought this was really relevant is because I love her journey. It was just amazing. It was all self induced and inspired. And sometimes it's just like Brett's situation where something happens with your health and you start shifting over. So if you don't mind, Car, just kind of run through like how you ran into this book, how you used it, and how you continued to use it.
So I read this book when I was 19. I was living in LA. So this is like years ago. And I always struggled with, I was never like overweight, but I was never like as trim as I wanted to be. Like, I mean, I think like if you're in the business of being seen a lot, whether it's acting or modeling or whatever, you're going to be hyper aware of how you look. And so I think that how I looked was always in my mind. And I never was like a kid who had a really good metabolism or anything like that. Like I had to start watching what I ate like very, very young. I could just gain weight very easily. So I have to be careful about that. But it was kind of like all consuming. And I was so obsessive because at the time I was doing fit modeling, which isn't like fitness modeling. It's like no one ever actually takes pictures of you. You just try on clothes for the clients and the companies that are actually making them to make sure they fit a real person. And when you work for one company, they hire you for maybe a year. And if you even gain like a half an inch of weight, you can get fired. So it's like, you don't want to lose like your stable job and like you want to stay in that. But so I think I was so obsessed with food and it kind of like overtook my mind. And I really wanted to just kind of like be free from it more than anything. And that's when I listened to the book Intuitive Eating. And it's really funny because the first thing it tells you to do is that you have to, because like when you go on a diet, whether it's to look good or whatever, there's all these like rules, whether it's like don't eat past 8 p.m. and I don't eat carbs and I don't eat cereal for breakfast, and you create all these rules. And then when you break these rules, like you feel like you've been bad. And so you kind of like self-punish. And so the first rule of intuitive eating is to let yourself eat whatever you want, because there's like years of programming behind you that have been told that you can't have these foods. And the goal of it is to eat healthy and truly nourish your body. But until you kind of get it out of your system, like these things that you've been told are really bad, you kind of have to let yourself eat them until you really realize that when you eat those foods, you don't feel good. And there's some type of emotional connection to them. And it's not like, oh, I actually need Lucky Charms for its nutritional value. It's that I associated like happiness with them. So that's like my go-to binge food or whatever. And a lot of this programming, I think, comes from childhood. Like, you start young, like your parents are like, oh, you can't have dessert till you finish all your vegetables. So you force yourself to finish your vegetables, even though you're full, just because you want dessert. Or if you're a really emotional kid and your mom doesn't know what to do, she's going to give you ice cream. And then so then you like associate. So we build all of these relationships with food that are really unhealthy in a specifically like a diet culture, I would say. And so I read this book, and then when it was like, oh, you have to eat whatever you want, I was like, I can't do that. Like, I'm going to get fired from my job if I eat whatever I want. Like that's not possible. And so this is what I always tell people is it took me probably like 3 full years of that, of really applying all the principles before I was able to fully master it and really feel like I do eat whatever I want. And it's not in like I eat unhealthy, but I had to really go through a phase of eating unhealthy because I had to get it out of my system that I was so hard on, and dieting myself and putting myself through these things that I really didn't want to go through, until I was able to really realize that what I wanted and what my body was really craving was true nourishment and it comes out in the form of sugar cravings and all these things. But what your body really needs is nutrient density. And so I think that people really don't like it because they like fast fad diets that are like going to give you immediate results. But it really changed my life because once you can master one area of your life where you live intuitively with a really good respect for your body and total freedom, I think it kind of bleeds into other areas. And then now I don't ever really like fall asleep, like thinking about what I'm going to have for breakfast unless I'm like excited about it, but that's different.
Carla, it's really interesting. So like intuitive eating, when I think of intuitive, it's more of a feel thing, but it sounds like in LA, you're obviously focused more on like the aesthetic of how you look, which kind of detaches you from that feel element of intuitive eating, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that was like the biggest struggle because I couldn't really fully commit. So I would just have to commit in like smaller areas. Cause even like I've been through so many like health trends, but people really demonized all forms of sugar, even like fruit and natural forms of sugar. And I think that was like, oh my gosh, having a smoothie with bananas instead of blueberries because they're so large, like low in sugar. I think that getting over like the small fears, I think that's why I had to do it so slowly, is because I wasn't in a position where I could actually, gain a few extra pounds. But it wasn't until I left that I was really able to kind of go through that process.
Interesting. That's what's so interesting about this intuitive approach is it almost allowed you to do like your own internal research and figure out the best approach that works for you as a person, as Carlisle, which is interesting because it's like everyone wants like a template or a blueprint to follow now, which is great. And like we both fell into that category where we wanted the template, but it's like, as we've gotten older, I do think that we've naturally probably followed your approach too, where it's like, it's like, it's okay to have some honey or some fruit. It's like, you're not kicked out of the carnivore club if you do that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But people associate so much morality behind the food that they eat. And stress plays a huge part of it. There's an endocrinologist that Harry and I have both become good friends with named Dr. Brian Lenskis, and Carmen, he'd actually probably be a great guest for you. And he talks a lot about the concept of just stress and managing your blood sugar and your weight. And he had mentioned that he had a client that was a type 2 diabetic and has been doing like a low sugar, low grain diet and has had really good success. And he was monitoring him on a CGM when he was on vacation for a week. And he couldn't believe like just how he was seeing his scores go all over the place because he was just eating whatever he wanted. He was enjoying, he had unplugged, but he actually ended up losing weight on the trip because he wasn't stressed out. He was just spending time with his family. There was no morality around what he was eating. He was just kind of living in the moment. So I don't know. It's kind of a little bit of a rambling story, but that kind of reminds me of what you're talking about.
Well, Brett, I think it speaks to a philosophy that we both stand behind, where it's a lot of the food stuff. When people get hung up on it, they start to have these really negative internal dialogues with themselves where they're beating themselves up about certain foods that they're eating or not eating. And when you start mastering that internal dialogue where it's okay to like loosen the grip a little bit and you start getting excited about eating the good foods, and it's like the wind is in your sails at that point when you want to wake up and eat nourishing food. Like you do that, you go through that rewiring process. And a lot of that is just the backbone of it is just, how are you speaking to yourself? Like, are you telling yourself that you're doing like great and like it's okay to slip up, or are you just like beating yourself up to the point that you're not able to actually focus on the important aspects of eating well?
Absolutely. I think
so true.
I think people like, I was talking about this, but I think that people are really afraid to let go of the guilt because they feel like it'll like have them spiral out of control. And so I think that people control themselves by keeping themselves like extremely guilty. So it's like, oh, if I have an ice cream sandwich, I'm going to like sit and wallow in that guilt, because if I punish myself, then I'm not going to do it again. So I think that it's kind of like learning how to trust yourself. And I think that especially someone who's addicted to food, because that is like, it's funny because I always talk about like that is an addiction, and it's not, there's no sympathy for it, because like it's not like heroin where people are like, just stop doing heroin. Like you can't just like stop eating. Like you really have to rewire your whole brain. But I think that you're right that the internal dialogue that people have when they go out of like their own little rules they set for themselves is really like a very damaging thing. And then if you're eating healthy food but you're not really happy about it, it's not going to do as good as it can if you're really thankful and grateful and it feels like you really should be eating it.
Well, and that also kind of speaks to what Brett and I try to talk about a lot, where it's like, it's not just these diets in a vacuum. It's eat real foods versus like, don't eat processed food. It's not even really food, right? There's not as much nourishing value in those products that are on the shelf. So as long as you're steering towards eating real foods, you can just like categorize almost everything as a win. If you're just, you know, even if you do have the ice cream the one day, at least it was some like minimally processed, like good, healthy ice cream, as opposed to picking up the bag of chips and like eating the stuff that you know is ultimately not great for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. So if I say a word, I would love to hear what each one of you have to say about it. And we'll start with Carly, we'll go to Harry, then we'll go to Brett.
Okay.
Backlash eating. Do you have a story or something you'd like to share about it?
I used to have, like, whenever I would go on really, really strict diets, I used to have nightmares that I would eat like a whole pizza, and then I'd wake up thinking I did that the night before, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm like so mad at myself. Like, I feel so gross. And it would take me like a while before I realized that I didn't actually like eat all these like forbidden fruits, but I had like all these like recurring nightmares about eating food. But I think that I'm like a very big like mood eater. But I think that there's definitely like foods that I would go to whenever I like felt like I was like off the rails, if that's what you mean by backlash.
Yeah, backlash. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that diet all week, and then they have that, they call it a cheat day, but it's technically backlash eating.
Yeah. I would say like I'm more of like a sweets person. Like that's like my go-to if like I want, like I'm not as like tempted by like salty foods as I am by sweets. So that would be like my backlash eating would probably be something sweet.
Yeah, I fall in the sweet category too. I don't know if I have a specific story, but just like there were definitely certain periods of my life, like post-college, where I was working in a more stressful environment and didn't really have everything tightened up. And then I would go through these periods of really being focused on my diet, really being focused on working out. And then by like day 10, I'd basically worn my willpower down to zero. And then boom, it's like, all right, I'm back in the office eating like the crappy foods every time I walk past them, like Oreos. I would literally for like habitually just walk past the kitchen and on my way back from the bathroom, just grab like a thing of Oreos or Doritos, which to me now I'm like, I won't eat it. But then it was just kind of like part of like the stress induced eating where I was, you know, trying to manage everything and just really didn't have a good foundation. Like it was a system built on a broken foundation. So it wasn't built to last. And I think that like, that was kind of the fundamental point where it's like, okay, then you backlash. And as soon as you backlash, eat, then it opens up the floodgates for, you know, a few other days of bad eating. So I do think like just foundationally, the foundation is important, and like having just simple principles to fall back on definitely has helped me now just, you know, right size everything and feel very good about, you know, my philosophy around eating and just living a healthy life.
Yeah. And I think Carlisle had a good point too, just around the concept of food and sugar addiction. And I don't know why as a society, we tend to like think that food addiction isn't legitimate. It's like, oh, well, why don't you just have better willpower? But to your point, it's like, if you want to get cocaine or heroin, you have to go out of your way to actually get that. You need to know a drug dealer. You have to be able to contact them, drive out, get the drug. Whereas to your point, Harry, it's like you're working a corporate job, and the cabinets are literally just loaded with all these packages, all the sugar. Like Coca-Cola's distribution strategy is literally to always be within an arm's reach of you. So I don't think it's a lack of willpower. It's just the way that the system is set up right now. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind and really important. And I'm different than both of you, where it's like, I do love sweets for sure, but it's definitely the savory stuff for me. So I literally remember like starting to go down my diet journey and living in New York City and like thinking about going to get some fast food or some pizza and like sitting in this state of just gray of, oh, I don't know. I want this thing. I want it. It tastes so good, but I know I shouldn't do this. And then I'm going back and forth for 20 minutes. And then I finally go and get it. and I'm feeling like I am, quote unquote cheating, back to the morality. And I'm like, damn, it was not a good spot to be in. And feeling like I threw the whole day away just because maybe I had like a couple of slices of pizza. But for me, it was never just a couple slices of pizza. Like I would crush the entire box or crush the entire bag of chips. Like
Carly's nightmare.
Yeah.
That's so cute. And so when one of the things I really liked in the book, and by the way, the book that we're talking about is called Intuitive Eating. It's written by Evelyn Tribole, if I'm saying her name correctly. But she talked about how we have this tendency to outthink our personal biology, and we've been taught to do that because of, like Carly said, she grew up with mom on one kind of diet, dad on another kind of diet, friends on another kind of diet, and it just all becomes part of that programming. But they were talking about how you really can teach a child this. And I know you guys are, all at the age where you're starting to have friends that have children and stuff like that. Do you have any advice on how you would go about it so that your kids or the kids that or the kids that are in the next generation would grow up with a healthier way of going about it?
There's, I don't have a baby, obviously, but I know one of my friends who does something called baby-led weaning. And it's before your baby is actually eating regular food and just relying on it. Like you put like different kind of foods in front of them and you let them eat it with their hands. And it like therefore starts to begin to establish like a relationship with food where they can really explore it and see what they like. Like they're not relying on it for nutrition because they're still breastfed or formula fed, but they're the very core basics of, I'm not feeding you this and shoving the spoon in your mouth and trying to force it down your throat, but I'm just letting you explore like eggs or grapes or like little things like that. And then I would say not soothing a child with their comfort food, because you don't want them, or using it as a form of connection. Like if you're like a really busy parent, but you only hang out with your kid when you go get ice cream, like if you know what I mean, like then they're going to associate like ice cream with being loved by my father. Like you can't like, you've got to be careful, I think, about not using their like favorite foods as a reward or withholding it as a punishment. And if you can, like if you have multiple kids, I think it's harder, but letting your kids eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full versus like, oh, 2 hours till dinner, I'm not going to let you have a snack now. Then they're told from a young age that their hunger cues are incorrect and they're on a time schedule versus like a body schedule is what I would say.
Yeah, I think the framing is really interesting just in terms of like, I feel like parenting, a lot of times you have to be willing to say no. And I think trying to make eating, like having dinner together and like promoting a lot of like promote instead of being the one who always has to say no. So like just trying to put like great food on the table through like letting them enjoy the cooking process and sitting down and enjoying the meal with you so that they're involved and get to see, the preparation that goes into you making the meal. I think there's a lot of easy outs for parents these days when it comes to feeding your kids, which is just kind of unfortunate. And it's really like the environment and society that we live in. Like you can just choose to order a pizza, but if you actually let your kid be a part of the process of, hey, we're going to make steak and eggs tonight and you're going to be the one stirring the eggs, then they're a little bit more excited about what they're eating and they're a little bit more engaged and they want to take part in it. So I think that's one thing that, I don't know, it obviously has not been something that I've done because I don't have a kid, but I think that it's something I look forward to. It's like, you want to bring the family together around food. And, I lived in Italy for a little bit and we ate dinner together every single night at the exact same time. And the food was always something that was cherished. So like, and my family did the same thing, but obviously, it was a little longer ago, but yeah. So I think that's definitely something I would try to do.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, to going off your point, Harry, to take it even a step further, if you can, because I know like a mental model that we both have that's worked really well for us is like basically training your brain to recognize the fact that basically anything on the inner aisle of a grocery store besides coffee and a few is a product, right? It's not actually real food. It's just some type of a combination of refined grains, sugar, processed seed oils, et cetera. It's not actual food, even though it's in like a package and it's colorful and it's got a cartoon character on it. That's not real food. The real food is on the stuff on the outside of a grocery store, single ingredient. You can go to your local farmer. So I even think like I think something that would be really cool is being able to actually like teach your kids how to garden and have those shared experiences, or take them out to a farm. Like there's a ranch in Central Texas called Rome Ranch that Harry showed me about. And they do bison harvests every couple months where they literally will, it's kind of like it's an amazing experience where they kill the bison, they butcher it. You try the liver, you try the organs, they send you home with a bunch of the meat. And they talk about the way that the bison have really regenerated the land. So I think like experiences like that for kids would be very valuable. And then also too, I also think like being able to limit your kids' TV consumption is massive, because I was just reading this yesterday. The average kid watches 3 hours of TV a day. And in that 3 hours, they're exposed to over, I think it's 23 commercials for foods that are high in fat and sugar. So
it's good.
Like,
that's so good.
Yeah.
Yes.
But most people don't know that.
No, it is. And that's the thing too, just about TV in general. I mean, really and truly, I quit. You can ask Carly, and even like when I took in those guys from jail and they'd come to the house and they'd be like, you said you didn't watch TV, but I didn't believe you. Like, you really don't ever have the television on. I mean, unless it was some sports thing or, whatever. But one of the things that we did and people, think that they don't have time for this, but I actually hired one of the high school girls to do my grocery shopping and to do this properly. But what she would do, I had her go and get fruits and vegetables. But the problem is, if you don't clean the fruits and vegetables, if you don't have them cut in certain ways or whatever, then the kids aren't going to grab it. They will not take the package of blueberries out, open the blueberry package, even if it's clean. They won't do it. And so we literally had like this huge refrigerator, and I just had rows of like bowls that were just open bowls of, grapes and strawberries and blueberries and just different things. And they would just go through them. And if I had if I had put the boxes in there, they wouldn't eat them. Same with carrots. I discovered if I cut the carrots and put them in cold water, they would eat the heck out of them. But if I didn't do that, it wasn't going to get eaten. And I think that sometimes kids just like portable food, and I think I'm a kid at heart because I love portable food. I love to be able to just grab something and like walk around and eat it, or like get in my car or whatever. And speaking of portable food, do you guys have a favorite snack that you go to for like if you're, in the car or doing something, on the run?
I do, definitely. There's
I know what you're gonna say.
I'll get a craving for snack food, and when I do go for snack food, it's these pork rinds that I found at Whole Foods. They're so good, and they're just salty, and they're high in fat too, so they satiate. So that's what I'll go for. Brett, I don't know. Was that the one you were thinking of?
So there's two brands of pork rinds. One is Epic, that actually owns the ranch that we went to when we were talking about that bison harvest, and they're fantastic. And then there's this other brand called 4505. And there's something about their pork rinds that are so freaking good. Harry got this big order from Thrive Market a couple weeks ago when I was at his apartment. And I think he literally had 6 bags of them, and they were gone. By the next day I came back, the 6 bags, and it's not anything on Harry. It's just, they're literally that good. They're incredible.
No, so it's something I can't have in the house. It's something I need to like, I'm like driving past the Whole Foods, I just go in and grab it, because otherwise I'll just eat them all day.
Yeah.
So if anyone sees a guy at the market at Whole Foods with 6 bags, it's just Harry. He's just there getting his snacks for the road. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I used to be obsessed with I still love them, but they're dehydrated walnuts. So what I do is I take walnuts and I soak them for 24 hours in like really heavy sea salt and rinse them maybe once or twice. And then I put them in the dehydrator or like a really, really low oven for like another 24 hours, like 12 hours. And they're so good. It doesn't even taste like a walnut. It's amazing. You guys should try it.
Yeah, for some reason we're trained that like if something tastes good, then it's too good to be true. Whereas like with some of the stuff that Carlisle was saying before, it's like real food as nature intended tastes so freaking good.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's no like, there should be no guilt there, right? It's like the more flavorful something is naturally, that's actually an indication that it's like very nutrient dense. Harry introduced me to this amazing book called The Dorito Effect. And we've actually gotten pretty close with the author, Mark Schatzker. He's come on the podcast and we just did a Twitter space with him 2 nights ago. And the whole book is just talking about the fact that like our food has basically just been like natural food has been sucked out of the flavor and also the nutrients. Whereas processed crap that's everywhere, it's so hyper palatable. We pump it with artificial flavoring that makes it taste so good that you literally can't stop eating it. And then the actual healthy food has no flavor to it. I'm getting on my soapbox per usual, but
he's an incredible resource. I think he's someone who can explain some of these topics around intuitive eating really well. So the Dorito Effect really talks about what it means to have nutritional wisdom, which at its core is just intuitive eating. Like what would you eat if you were presented like in the wild, like and so he has this great story where he talks about these goats that were being studied, and like one of the things that they were eating was ended up being poisonous to them, but they learned that through the process of eating it, obviously. So like they're in nature, you see intuitive eating all the time, and we're no different. So he can articulate it way better than I can. And I would like, not to plug our own podcast, but our podcast with him was awesome. So
please plug it. Please plug it. It's the Meat Mafia, and it's on Spotify and YouTube. Anywhere else?
We have an RSS feed, which I think goes out to like Apple and all the other ones too, but we're focused on the Spotify and YouTube right now. So
good. I love it. Yes. I like I told you, and that reminds me, thank you for introducing me to the Gourmet Caveman. He is going to be on my show.
Oh, nice.
I think this Friday. So it'll be soon. So I can't wait to have him. And so thanks for sharing. I like that you guys share.
Fantastic. I mean, so yeah, Gourmet Caveman's amazing. And I mean, you connected us with Dr. Mary Kerr, who's one of the best podcast guests we've ever had on. I've shared her episode probably more than any others, because she just has so much good knowledge in there. And it's so refreshing to talk to a doctor that really wants to treat the root causes, and a doctor that actually prides herself on being able to like meet with her patients for over an hour and be invested in their health journey. That's just stuff that's so foreign to us, because we're used to seeing our doctor. We wait for them for 45 minutes in the office, and then we maybe get 10 minutes with them. They prescribe you a drug, and you don't see them for 6 months after that. So
yes. But just so people know, she's not taking new patients. She's not looking for patients. She's every time to see people are like, "Can I get Dr. Mary's number?" And I'm like, she's on a sabbatical. Like, so I'm just letting everybody know. But if you want her information, she is starting to do a podcast circuit. So you can definitely find her. So that's very good. But yes, it's great. And, you know, she's the typical example, just like Carlisle. Carlisle burned her adrenals out and, you know, kind of destroyed herself. And same with you with your colitis or your ulcerative colitis. And she had a serious medical, you know, like phenomenon that happened to her, and no one could help her. Like, she literally had to go and figure it out herself. And that's what made her switch.
From social media. Like, it wasn't until I started like deep diving on people's like Instagram accounts and reading their like long captions about a bunch of things that they tried that I even figured out what it was. But yeah, I got blood work and stuff, and none of that really came back. And I was just tired all the time. And a lot of it, I think, was just I needed minerals. Like, I was drinking water with no minerals, and I wasn't eating food that had minerals and things like that. But yeah, I figured it out from, you know, perusing people's health Instagrams. So
it's amazing.
Hey, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can learn on Twitter, and even like the software engineers and then journalists have done more to teach us about nutrition than almost like 99% of Western doctors. And I think, Carlisle, how I first came across you, before I even knew that you were Carmen's daughter and we had this connection, you had posted that recipe for the cold brew and Shilajit gummies.
Oh, that's awesome.
It looks like the best thing I've ever seen. I need to just get in contact with this person. I didn't even know that you two were related. This was like months ago or something like that.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
I
that
love
actually
those.
was my favorite gelatin of hers. I absolutely love it. I was concerned, like, you got to like put a warning on this because
It's
people can get
strong.
too many, too many.
Yeah.
I just wanted to keep eating them because it was coffee flavored and it was so good. But she's done a lot of them that I just love, and oh, she's always playing with it, So it'll be fun to see. Have you guys had any and like Carly just told me the other day, and I had no idea that there was such a thing. Do you guys know that there's beef jerky that's like chips?
Yeah, we both were ordering these liver crisps that were pretty similar. Um, and those are the only ones I've tried, but I know that the steak crisps exist too. They're basically like chips, right?
It's
Yeah.
just
No,
so
I've never.
dehydrated.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never tried the liver ones because I can't do the taste of liver. Like I take it like raw, like frozen in pill form because even if I get like a slight taste of it, I want to puke. But
Yeah.
the steak ones they're very good. Like they're what you expect, just very thin and dehydrated and crunchy.
Yeah. And I know that there's a brand called Carnivore Crisps that seems like it's dehydrated. And then have either of you tried biltong before?
Ah,
Yeah. So
how do you
that's
spell it?
Biltong.
Okay.
We've gotten pretty close with this gentleman named Doug Reynolds who runs Low Carb USA. And he's a South African guy. He's done like over 100 marathons and ultra marathons, and he's been low carb for a long time. And I guess in South Africa, this is almost like a South African style of jerky, but it tastes so much better. It's almost like you taste more of the meat. It tastes more like steak. And it's huge over there. And there are some companies that are starting to do it in the US. It's still like relatively new, but it's so freaking good. I know Harry's tried it and it's amazing.
Yeah. Now, do you guys like more soft and chewy jerky, or do you like more like hard and like meaty like jerky? I know it's so weird, but I can't stand the soft stuff. I don't know why. Carly's like she likes both, but
Oh, I like the soft and chewy.
Me too.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I guess I think I must have an oral fixation or something because I just like that it's like this process, this like long-term commitment to get through it. But also like this morning, this is a drink that Carly made me. We had mocktails on my previous one, and I was the only one that had this extraordinary blue drink. Tell them what was in this drink that you made me.
So it's simple, but if you I'm obsessed with putting blue spirulina in anything because it turns it like bright blue. So I just did orange juice, egg yolk, bee pollen, raw honey, and one whole lime.
Wow.
And then
It
sometimes
was
I'll add a
so
little like
good.
yogurt or goat kefir or something. And then I just add like a really big scoop of the blue spirulina in it. It turns it like
How many raw
bright
eggs
blue.
did you give me?
Just one.
Oh, okay.
I just do
was
the
curious.
yolk. I don't do the whole egg. Yeah. But
Yeah.
So but yeah, I'm like a kid. Like if something is like bright or fun colored, it makes it much more fun to enjoy it.
Yeah. Harry,
yeah,
you got
those were your.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, you're good.
Oh, I was just gonna say those were her prettiest gelatins when she does the blue spirulina in them. They're just like they looks like something any kid would want to eat. It's so good.
Yeah. I was gonna say, Harry, you got to give Carlisle and Carmen your raw milk ice cream recipe because it's insane.
Oh yeah.
I saw that.
Spill the beans. Yeah, so I have it posted on my Twitter, but we went over to one of our friends' house and he was making ice cream for his kids, and I was just sitting there. I couldn't take it. I was like, all right, I need to get an ice cream maker and figure out how to make some raw milk ice cream. And Brett has since ordered an ice cream maker too.
It's getting delivered today.
And
That's
I was
awesome.
just like thinking about what he was putting into it and just wanted to come up with my own recipe. So I basically poured this raw milk into the ice cream maker. It was about 2 cups, and then whipped up heavy cream, crushed a bunch of berries into the heavy cream, and then put that in so that I could actually get like the berries, the consistency that I wanted them to get to. And then added a little bit of honey and added some chocolate, and that was it. It was
that sounds so good.
The only thing I was missing was duck eggs. I wanted to add a duck egg in there to make it a little bit more of a creamy texture, but next time. That was trial number 1.
That's so cool. So my nephews are obsessed with everything Japan, everything, sushi, whatever. And so the last time I went to a party at the family house, I brought quail eggs. And we were cracking them, and you take the whites off, and then you put a little bit of caviar and a little bit of ponzu sauce and a little bit of lime. And if you want sriracha, if you like spicy, and you put that and you do like a shooter, the whole thing was gone. Every single quail egg was gone. They loved it. It was so
Wow.
good. It's just kind of fun and something different. I mean, they're just tiny though. Like it's not like you're getting a big nourishment, but it's just kind of one of those things that's fun to do. I learned how to do it at a sushi place. A
Well,
lady that I know owned the restaurant, and she came out and brought it, and I was like, okay, I have to know how to do this. So you guys need to try that. But I haven't tried duck eggs. Wait, Carly,
Yeah,
did we
we
try
have.
duck eggs?
Uh-huh.
We scrambled them.
Yeah. And
What
I
do you
baked
guys
with
do
them.
with your duck eggs?
I usually scramble them. Yeah, just scramble them and put a little cheese in there. They're just, for whatever reason, they're a little bit fluffier. Like they just have a little bit more of a fluffy consistency than just your regular chicken egg. So I tend to go for the duck eggs when I'm trying to treat myself.
Mm-hmm. Their omega-6 is supposed to be off the chart too. And I know there's a guy, Carmen, I don't know if you've met him. He goes by JB on Twitter. Bart, I think it's Bart Simmons. He's a farmer out of Dallas.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't.
He's like 60 something. He's like a silver fox
Looks incredible.
stud. And his farm, they sell duck eggs too. So maybe that would be a good spot to maybe source them from. I know the omega-6 profile is supposed to be off the charts with duck eggs.
That's so cool. So do either of you have any aspirations to, or any of you, Car? I know you kind of want some,
For
but
what?
do you have any aspirations to have your own chickens?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually like, that's why we got started. And we have this dream of having this amazing property that combines all the different things that we like. So it'd be like some fitness element, a farm element, and then have some cottages for people to come and stay and do these really cool retreats at. So that's what we're working towards. That's the end goal, is to have some animals to really put our money where our mouth is. So
Yeah. Yeah, we everything we're doing with the Meat Mafia is like the ultimate end goal of what we're doing is like we want to make money so we can literally be able to buy this incredible piece of property and hopefully in Central Texas and be able to create these experiences where people can come out, be able to raise our families there and like have that be like the lasting legacy. So that's 1,000. Everything we're leaning towards is to be able to actually own our own farm.
I love it. I love when young people are actually thinking about their legacies. That's so inspiring and it's so refreshing, actually. Um, have you guys talked to any of the existing ranchers that you had? Like, is there anyone willing to sell you a piece of what they have? Do you need a whole thing? Can you be attached to them in some way? Or, can there be a mini, Meat Mafia center before there's the big one?
yeah, I think that's how it would probably start. Realistically, having to acquire some of the skills, like neither Brett or myself have the skills from the get-go to actually run a farm. But I think it would probably have to start that way and then ultimately end up, doing our own thing. But we have some farmers that we've come into contact with that are looking for help, and Brett and I are definitely going to be rolling up our sleeves and going out to some of these farms and doing some work for them. And then hopefully that leads into the next step, which would maybe be leasing a little plot of land and figuring out more and more. So
That's so cool. I
yeah,
love it. And so
yeah.
does that mean that you both will be in the same state, or are you going to do this Meat Mafia like satellite offices?
Yeah. No, we'll definitely be in the same state. So I'm doing
Texas?
I'm doing a quick stint in San Diego, but I think that we talk about this all the time. It's just like the principles and like the soul of Texas is unbelievable. And that's definitely where we're thinking for sure long term.
Yay. All right. So any of my Texas friends out there with room on their ranches, come on, let's share.
Yeah. We'd be happy just to volunteer, honestly. We would love that.
Yeah, there's somebody was showing me about it yesterday. There's this app called Workaway where it used to be just international, but apparently now there's places in the US where you can get this app. You have to, fill out whatever, like register to be a part of it. But then, so one of my friends who is really going through tough times, she just signed up to work away at a horse farm in Tennessee, and she's so excited. Like she's
So
just
cool.
ready to be outside and be with the horses, and it's just a totally different change of life. It's a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, contrast that to what most people are dealing with. If you're living near a city, it's totally different.
Yeah, so much more natural outdoors. It wakes you up earlier because the animals and everybody's, nature doesn't stop. It starts early.
Right.
It doesn't sleep in because you had too much to drink the night before. How about you, Carly? Do you want to live on a farm?
Like a mini one. I wouldn't, I like traveling so much that I would never want such a big responsibility that I literally couldn't ever leave, and I think that if you're managing your farm, just you, or even if it's just a few people, I think I would need like much more help.
Mm.
If it was like a small one, like and I would like to have like my own food and garden and stuff, and maybe like chickens and goats, but nothing like too intense to where I couldn't ever like a small, like a homestead, I think would be
Yeah.
a better word than farm for me personally.
Yeah, and then I'll watch it while you're gone.
Yeah.
I always interject myself into her future.
Of course. Yeah, that's what moms are supposed to do.
You're gonna be farming in your heels.
That could be a good thing.
Oh, that reminds me of every time I would take you to horseback riding, and I couldn't stand the smell of it, and I'd be in my high heels, and I'd just be like, oh, it just wasn't my thing. But she liked horses, so I didn't have a choice. I had to deal with it. And so neither of you have ever lived on a farm, spent time on a farm, even weekends on a farm with an uncle or aunt or something. So this would just be all new.
Yeah, my sister and mom were really big horseback riders growing up. So I mean, not working, but spending a ton of time on farms growing up. But other than that, no, pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar for me too. Like I'm a Jersey boy at heart. And so like all of this, if you were to tell me 2 years ago that like this is now my life's passion, I would have said that you're absolutely crazy because you're just, right. You're almost taught that like farmers are uneducated or like there's something wrong with the fact that they're a farmer or it's like a multi-generational business. When now it's like being able to be connected to the food that you're eating, that's the ultimate form of autonomy. So that's why we both like openly admit this. It's like, we have no idea what we're doing, but like, we're going to learn what we're doing because you have enough passion and energy for something, you can make anything happen. And farmers, they want to help. Like Harry, when we were living together, training for the Ironman in Waco, Harry was literally just going out to farms, just to like learn more about them and figure out how he could help. And they were all like really receptive and they didn't understand what his motives were because they're like, why is this young guy coming out to ask me questions? But he literally just wanted to learn more and help them.
Very skeptical of me showing up on their property.
I would be too if you showed up. I'd be like, oh, what's this kid doing here? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, though. I really do. And I think that I think it's the one thing, like even just looking at this crazy baby formula thing, like, okay, what?
Yeah.
We live in America, like what's going on here? But this is, to me, we should all kind of be set up in a way that old town, small town, like, don't worry, we've got you covered. Like this, for milk, it would be, people just need to pump more breast milk. Let's get it done, get it in the freezers, whatever it is, we've got to be able to help each other. And so that small town thing, I think what, Brett was saying about if you would have asked me 2 years ago, same thing. Carly and I started joking, like on Let Me Ask My Mom when we had the other podcast. We were literally joking about like what kind of man we wanted, opposed to the kind of man we used to want. And she called him Bunker Boy, and how he'd have a farm and he'd have, all kinds of ammunition, and we'd have chickens. And has it changed the kind of woman that you'd like to have as far as what you used to be attracted to opposed to what you're attracted to now?
I'm kind of an old soul, so I don't know if it really like changed too much for me, but I think, yeah, I mean, it takes a certain type of person who wants to live that type of intentional lifestyle. So I think if I went to a bar and was looking for a girl, I'd probably be fishing in the wrong pond. But, I think there are people out there who are looking to get away a little bit, or who grew up in a similar environment and want to just create that sort of legacy like Brett was talking about. So I don't know, maybe a little bit of change, but not too much.
Yeah. I feel like you've always been really consistent with your principles, which is always like something that I admire in you.
I'm pretty steady, but I don't know. Can be a bad thing sometimes too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it,
That's what I got.
It sounds all good to me. And so what about you, Brett? Has it changed the type of things that you were wanting in a partner, or
Yeah, well, and I think what's important to know too is like I lived in New York for over 3 years, and I think I was just fully indoctrinated in that, like almost just like corporate or like super Western society, especially in New York of all places. It's like the epicenter of just like pleasure and entertainment and distraction. And as I think as like a young guy, not a man, like a younger guy, I had that just like naive expectation of like, oh, I'm going to be a bachelor for a while and be really career focused. And I don't know if I want kids. And it's so interesting to think about that now, because it's like, I want a woman that wants to be a wife, and I want to raise a bunch of kids, and I want someone that wants to be on the farm with me, and just in this like really supportive, committed relationship where we can actually build something together. It's like you're taught that it's weird how we've been taught that now that like the hookup culture is actually something that's normal and natural, or like pornography is normal and natural. Like this is like literally the devil being injected into society to basically steal your soul. That's why this stuff is free. So I think just getting out of that culture has completely reshaped my mind in terms of like the future I want for myself and the woman and the partner that I want to have to spend the rest of my life with.
That's awesome. How about you, Car?
What? Did it? Well, I mean, we talked
still
about
want
it
a
on our
bunker
show.
boy?
No, I mean, here's the problem. If you go like, what's that Robert Downey Jr. quote from Tropic Thunder? Where he's like, never go full retard, like never go like full bunker, because those people are like a little off their rockers, you know? Like you want someone who like has a plan, but can like still have like fun, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like you want someone who's money conscious, but you don't want like an extreme couponer. I think but I mean, I met my boyfriend on Twitter. So I think that we were very like aligned in a lot of our beliefs, because it's like such, you know, I share a lot of my opinions and they're very specific. So I think that was like a very nice way to meet someone, because we already knew that we were really aligned on a lot of the same things.
Yeah, I love how Carly's like, all my friends told me that I would never be able to find a boyfriend sitting at home researching, because she's like such a nerd. And then she found her boyfriend.
Like that's literally how I found my boyfriend, y'all. Don't make fun of me.
Because she was researching something.
He definitely saw your cold brew gummy post and like just instantly shot you a DM. He's like, whoever this is, I need to get to know her.
But yeah, no, I mean, Twitter is like a great place to meet people. Surprisingly.
It's absolutely my favorite. I love it.
Yeah.
Even outside of looking for like a romantic relationship, like we've met so many people who are just like you guys, and everyone else that we've come into contact with has been through Twitter. And the people out there who are actively engaging on Twitter are looking for knowledge, and they're interesting people. They're sharing their pieces of wisdom. You can come across amazing people on Twitter. I think it's my personal favorite social media platform.
Me too. Carly and I used to just laugh, because in the very beginning of the pandemic, like we would be discovering stuff so fast, and then we'd be sharing it on Twitter and blah, blah, blah. And literally like 3 weeks later, it would show up on Facebook and people would think it was the most amazing stuff. And I'm like, wow, Twitter is so far ahead of everyone, including the news. You know, it just, and so I think anyone that really likes consuming a lot of data and information it's just gonna be very attracted to that platform. I think it's just amazing.
It's really funny too, because the only reason I ever got on Twitter was because of you, Mom. Like it's usually like when you're in high school, your parent is the one that's like telling you to like get off your phone and not get on social media. But she was like, Carly, you got to get on Twitter. It's so fun. Like I was like the dorky one who like didn't have Instagram or Twitter or whatever. But now I'm very happy that I have it.
Well, it was funny because early on I just started connecting with people that were really incredible. And now they've blown up. Like Trent Shelton, like at the time, I think he maybe had, 25,000 people, but now he's probably, I don't know, maybe I haven't looked him up in a long time, but he's got a huge following. And I saw it as a really beautiful way to create, like a store, so to speak, or, whatever, because anything that you wanted to sell or share, it could so easily be done. But I knew that if she didn't hurry up and like start younger, that, you know, she wouldn't have that built up. And so that was really the only reason that I thought it'd be fruitful later on in life. I didn't ever anticipate all of the censorship or any, I really didn't see that coming at all. It was wild.
It's crazy.
Do you guys ever get anyone after you guys about, like, do you have trolls as far as food stuff goes?
Some for sure.
A little bit, yeah. I would say the owner of that owns the account that's literally called Vegan on Twitter. It's got like 300,000 followers. Quote tweeted one of our threads and had just mentioned how like they agreed with the content of their threads, but they find that people in the animal-based community don't do enough speaking out about just like animal rights. And Harry and I are both pretty open to everything. So we invited him just to come on the podcast, which we're excited about because I personally don't know a ton about animal rights, but it's like, that's part of the reason why you choose to buy from a farm, right? Because you know that they're ensuring a really good quality of life for the animal. So we're actually excited to have him on to have like a productive conversation, because for us, I think all of us on this call right now, it's amoral. It's a natural part of life. It's like with life, there's death and vice versa. And it's a cycle. And for some reason, it seems like a lot of people in the vegan community don't understand that when it's like, Carmen, you touched on nature before. It's like nature isn't moral. Animals kill other animals to eat them and get their nutrients, like you talked about, Carly, and that's how they thrive. So, but back to the question, it's like there definitely is like a little bit, but it's not like Sean Baker or someone else where he like constantly has vegans coming after him. But who knows if that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it gets brutal sometimes. And it's usually, I think, you know, just like in the survivor world, because I do a lot of work with the SRA victims and stuff, but they go after the ones that are making progress or affecting things, you know. And the thing that I'm a big believer, like I know I have a ton of vegans that follow me. I know that I have, you know, all kinds of different types of religions, and you know, you can't please everyone all the time, but one of the things that I think people really need to do is stop telling other people what to do and to be so judgmental and to be a little softer and a little bit kinder and to, like you guys are doing. I love that. Instead of having a war on Twitter, inviting them on, and maybe having a war on Zoom. I don't know. But,
with Big Soy.
Yeah. Oops, we got disconnected. But to be able to listen to somebody else's and to understand that, you know, in my opinion, God's operating at all times and there are no mistakes, and that each person is learning at the level that they need to learn. And if we can just keep all getting better. But I totally agree with you, Harry and Brett, both of you, that to treat the animals really well rather than to put them in that big ag kind of lifestyle. It's horrific, actually. And so I get that. And then you're eating that, you know, that's energy that you're taking on. I really do believe that. But I think that we're here to serve the animals, and then they're, you know, there to serve us. You know, it's like we take care of them and they take care of us. But who knows, you know, 10 years from now, I might feel different. I'm open to that. You know, I don't know. Maybe somebody will shift my mind, or God will, or I don't know. But
it's that willingness to listen too, because I think that keeps you accountable too, which we're obviously, you know, I think like Brett's story in itself is amazing, but a lot of people will look at that and just be like, oh, well, it's just like one case. But there was a community there that was receptive to what Brett had to say, and they listened. And now it turns out that there's a lot of other people who are just like Brett, who cured an autoimmune disease through a specific way of eating. So you need to have open ears and just be willing to take in all the information that's out there, because there's a lot of different ways to do, you know, to live, and a lot of things to consider, obviously. But I do think that, you know, we try to listen as best we can, even though we are putting out some rather like blunt content at times.
I love watching y'all stuff. It's awesome. I'll just keep retweeting it. So do any of you, I know that Brett has a hard stop, so we need to kind of let this go, but do any of you have a last statement or anything that you want to share before we get?
No, just that this conversation has been awesome. We'd love to have Carly on the podcast too, to discuss her whole journey in intuitive eating. That would be great. And like I mentioned, we're constantly looking for more just like really cool female podcast guests, because we do have a lot of men on, and we definitely want to have more women on the podcast. So whether it's both of you or anyone that's listening, if anyone has any good intentions for guests, let us know. But we always have such a good time when we talk. So thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah,
Oh my
it was
gosh.
great to meet you guys. I would love to come
My
on
pleasure.
anytime.
All right. The Meat Mafia's last word is going to be food. So this is what I think people should think about. Just summarizing the conversation. Food is the bedrock of how we're supposed to live in a healthy life. So eat with intention and try to eat real foods. That's as simple as it gets. So
That's from the Meat Mafia officially.
If there are listeners out there who are wondering what to do when it comes to dieting, just eat real food.
I love it. So
100%.
true. So true. Thank you so much. And yeah, play with intuitive eating, guys. I know that it's innate in us, and just how Brett cured himself and Dr. Mary cured herself and Carly cured herself, and it all came from within, and we can all do this, whether it be, for health and weight loss, or for, some sort of like training for Ironman, or whatever it is that you're doing. Just keep looking, you'll figure it out. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. And thanks, guys, for being with us.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. All right. Take care.
Bye.